It was a cold, rainy night, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. Sarah, a 22-year-old college student, was working her usual shift at Slice of Heaven, a small pizza joint on the edge of town. The last order of the night came in at 11:45 p.m., a large pepperoni pizza to an address on the outskirts of town, a place she'd never delivered to before. The customer's voice on the phone was soft, almost a whisper, and they insisted on paying in cash. Sarah grabbed the pizza, hopped into her beat-up car, and drove through the pouring rain. The address led her to a narrow, unlit road surrounded by dense woods. Her GPS flickered, losing signal as she approached the house, a crumbling, two-story Victorian home with a single flickering porch light. The windows were dark, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. Sarah hesitated but shook off her unease. "It's just a delivery," she told herself. She knocked on the door, and it creaked open slightly. No one was there. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Pizza delivery." From inside, she heard faint footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. Her heart raced as a shadow appeared in the doorway, but no one stepped out. The shadow just stood there, motionless. Sarah's breath hitched. She placed the pizza on the porch, took a step back, and muttered, here's your pizza, that'll be $15. The shadow didn't move. The air grew colder, and Sarah felt an icy hand brush against her arm. She screamed, dropped the money, and sprinted back to her car. As she peeled out of the driveway, she glanced in her rearview mirror. The shadow was still there, standing in the doorway, holding the pizza box. The next day, she quit her job and never looked back. Mark had been delivering pizzas for Tony's Pizzeria for 3 years. He thought he'd seen it all. Angry customers, strange requests, even a few tips in the form of homemade cookies, but nothing could have prepared him for the night he delivered to the old apartment building on Elm Street. The order was simple: 1 large cheese pizza to apartment 13B. When Mark arrived, the building looked abandoned. The lobby was dimly lit, and the elevator was out of order. He sighed and began climbing the stairs. But as he climbed, something felt off. The stairs seemed to go on forever, each flight identical to the last. He checked his watch. 10 minutes had passed, and he was still climbing. His legs burned, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Finally, he reached the 13th floor. The hallway was eerily silent, and the air smelled of mildew. Apartment 13B was at the end of the hall. Mark knocked, and the door creaked open. Inside, the apartment was dark, but he could make out a figure sitting in a chair, facing away from him. "Pizza delivery," Mark said, his voice shaky. The figure didn't respond. Mark stepped inside, placing the pizza on a nearby table. As he turned to leave, the door slammed shut. The figure in the chair slowly turned around, revealing a face that was blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, featureless skin. Mark screamed and bolted for the door, but it wouldn't open. He pounded on it, begging for help. Suddenly, he was back in the stairwell, the pizza box still in his hands. He ran down the stairs, but no matter how far he went, he couldn't find the lobby. Hours later, exhausted and terrified, he collapsed on the stairs. When he woke up, he was in the lobby, the pizza box gone. He quit his job that day, but to this day, he swears he can still hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the stairwell. Emily loved her job at Pizza Palace. It was flexible, paid decently, and she got to meet all kinds of people. But one delivery changed everything. It was a quiet Tuesday night when an order came in for a small vegetarian pizza to a house on Maple Lane. The address was unfamiliar, but Emily didn't think much of it. When she arrived, the house was quaint, almost like a dollhouse. The lawn was perfectly manicured, and the porch was adorned with colorful flowers. She knocked on the door, and a little girl, no older than 8, answered. She had wide, innocent eyes and a sweet smile. "Thank you for the pizza," she said, handing Emily a wad of cash. As Emily counted the money, she noticed something strange. The bills were old, really old, like from the 1920s. She looked up to ask the girl about it, but the door was already closed. Shrugging it off, she returned to her car. But as she drove away, she glanced in her rearview mirror and froze. The house was gone. In its place was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. Emily slammed on the brakes and got out of the car. She walked back to the lot, her heart pounding. There was no sign of the house, the little girl, or the pizza. Confused and terrified, she called her boss, who told her to come back to the shop. When she arrived, her coworkers were pale and silent. "What's wrong?" Emily asked. Her boss handed her a newspaper clipping from 1927. It was a story about a little girl who had died in a house fire on Maple Lane. The house had burned to the ground, and the girl's body was never found. The photo accompanying the article was of the same little girl who had answered the door. Emily quit on the spot and never delivered another pizza again.